Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl ate my children! But you've already heard that line over 100 times. Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl suck! Pokemon BDSP blow! Pokemon BDSM guzzle! But I'm not here to beat a dead horse here. Instead, I'm here to fight you, Game Freak! You scumbags! You stole my Generation 4 remix and I'll never forgive you! And with this sacred treasure It's weird because Game Freak didn't even work on BDSM, and yet I blame them for this horrendous game. Because we don't need a new Pokemon game every year. Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl are the Generation 4 remakes no one was expecting. They were developed by an indie company called ILCA, who was tasked with remaking Diamond and Pearl in a very short amount of time. And after 2 years, I can finally say Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl are the worst Pokemon games ever released. And yet I don't blame ILCA for the disaster. To be honest, I am happy that most of you enjoyed the region I grew up playing Pokemon with, even though Diamond and Pearl sucked. Please don't shoot me, please! The thing about Diamond and Pearl is they're not the best Pokemon games. The game is slow, there's a finite amount of Pokemon to use, and the world doesn't look the nicest. But there is a significantly better version called Pokemon Platinum, which takes all the weird and unfinished parts of Diamond and Pearl and just fixes them. More Pokemon to catch, areas you explore are nicer and prettier, and so much more content. But ILCA, the developers behind BDSP, chose to completely ignore Pokemon Platinum and focus heavily on remaking Diamond and Pearl. But that's fine, at least the games ran perfectly smooth with absolutely no issues. Nope! The games were completely broken on release. And when I say broken, I don't mean the characters just did a little jiggle when they weren't supposed to. I mean you could have made any Pokemon you had shiny, and if you pressed the 3 wrong buttons, you could have completely finished the game in less than 12 minutes. But let's ignore the bugs. Some people didn't even experience them. At least the games were fun, with a ton of new content, and the difficulty kept ramping up to keep you on your toes. 99% of the game was a cakewalk until you reached the Elite Four, which whip out a 40 caliber hand grenade and just went to town on you! Okay, disclaimer. From this point forward, I will no longer be shitting on Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. If you want to watch that, there are about 4,000 videos about this subject on YouTube, and I don't want to bore you anymore. But how? How did the most anticipated games in Pokemon history become so bleh? Is it because ILCA can't develop a game even if their lives depended on it? Nope! They made arguably the best One Piece game ever released and are working on a fantastic looking open world game called Sandman. Is it because of a lack of funds? Nope! The Pokemon company is loaded! Is it because Game Freak is a sniveling little hoo-ha who won't stop making games and gave this poor company barely enough time to develop a video game? Jackpot! Ever since Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, we have gotten a new Pokemon game every single year. And during the year of BDSP, we got 3 Pokemon games in 1 year. Legends Arceus, an unfinished masterpiece. Scarlet and Violet, an unfinished disaster. Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, an unfinished dumpster fire. Did you notice the trend? Yeah, they make me really sad. When we go back 11 or so years when Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire came out, there was a gap year between Generation 3 remakes and Pokemon Sun and Moon. I remember this time really well because if there was any Nintendo news, the comments were filled with, "Where's Pokemon? Where's Pokemon? Where's my goddamn Pikachu?" People were starving for a Pokemon game. And rightfully so. Pokemon Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire and X and Y came out with praise from the community. But then in 2017, Pokemon announced a game called Sun and Moon. And after the release of Pokemon Sun and Moon, we have gotten a new Pokemon game every single year. Ultra Sun and Moon, Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, Sword and Shield DLC, BDSM, Legends Arceus, Scarlet and Violet, Scarlet Violet DLC. And then in February, we're gonna get another game announced, and it's gonna be Poo Poo Caca! Disgusting. That was all in a span of 7 years and 2 different consoles. You cannot tell me the developers working at Game Freak aren't ripping their hair out, screaming, "Why God? Why me? Why couldn't I just be a social engineer?" Whatever the fuck that is. So tell me, Game Freak, was it really a good idea to throw the most anticipated Pokemon games of all time at a developer who has never published a game before? It was. Because of the way Pokemon has been releasing games, it was in their best decision to throw this project on ILCA rather than take the challenge, as Game Freak did not have enough time to work on the remakes themselves. It seems as though they would rather have used this development time on a project that became the first step for the future of the franchise. Pokemon Legends Arceus. I love this game. Yes, if Game Freak did not release a game every single year, they could have gotten their cake and eaten it as well. But I believe Game Freak is trying to break away from the mainline Pokemon cycle they've been in for the last 25 years. Of course, giving ILCA a small amount of time to work on these games isn't the brightest idea in the world. But look at the results. Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl sold over 14 million copies, which ILCA can use on their dev team and just make better games. And in my opinion, sacrificing the Diamond and Pearl remakes for arguably the greatest Pokemon game of all time was worth it. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, if you could like and subscribe, I would greatly appreciate it. Have a wonderful day. Ka-chow! What the fuck?